What's up, American family? Welcome back to our channel. I'm Andrew.
I'm Free.
And we are TheGhaMericans. So in this video, we have something special for you. We're going to talk about the misconceptions that Africans have about African Americans or Black Americans. But before we get into the video, can you like, comment, and subscribe, and also turn on your notification bell so that you can get updates whenever we make a post. So for those who don't know, my wife Free is from America and I'm African from the beautiful country of Ghana. And I feel like I'm in the best position to talk about this topic. So we're going to dive right into the video. So the very first misconception that Africans have about African Americans is they think they're better than us because they live in America. So most African Americans, when they go back to Africa, no, let me rephrase it. If they go back to any country in Africa, because Africa is a continent and a country. And so when most African Americans go back to a country in Africa for visit, they tend to think that everything in that country should be exactly like what they experience in the States. And so they get there with the mindset that everyone there should be able to speak their language, which is English, but mostly it's not the same. You know, when you go to some countries in Africa, they do not speak English. Some speak Spanish, some speak French, some speak Portuguese. And so in my opinion, I think that any African American who's going to visit any country should do their research and at least learn a bit of the language there so they can communicate with those people in that country in their own language, rather than expecting these citizens to speak their language to them, which is English.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, let me piggyback off of that. So I don't necessarily, I think for me, I'm just different. I really didn't care too much about oh, African, oh, I'm American. Blah, blah. I really didn't care at all because I was actually an undergrad with a lot of Africans, and honestly I didn't even know they were African until they said something because they're so Americanized. Okay. Most of them either they're first generation we could say African Americans, or however you want to phrase that, or they moved to America when they were very young, so they're very Americanized. So I didn't even know half of the people I was interacting with were actually African. So let me say that first. And like I said, I really don't feel like I'm better than anyone, honestly. So
another thing is, when they're on the visit, experiencing culture in these countries in Africa, they go oh, in America it's gonna be like this, it should be like this, or oh, in America you're gonna get this instead of that. But for me, I think that if you're going to a country in Africa to experience a culture, you should unlearn everything that you've learned in the States. You should unlearn it or just package it and put it safely in your home somewhere. Get on the plane with a clear mindset to learn a new thing, to learn something new, to learn new culture. Because I feel like if you go there with the mindset that, oh, I need to get this thing fast, I have a standard, oh, this is not good, I feel like, most Africans get turned off a lot. But because we're very nice people, we normally don't say anything, but definitely at the back of our minds, we are cussing you out real bad. Trust me. So for me, I would definitely say that anyone going back there should go with a clean, clear mind to learn something new.
Okay, so for me, I'm speaking from in general standpoint, because again, we live in China. When I lived in Suzhou a few years ago, I worked with a lot of, and they would say the same thing, oh, Americans think or their misconception was that oh, we think this about Americans. And again, it's not true, or I guess it can be true, but I guess maybe not, or I guess that's why it's a misconception. I'm sorry guys, let me get my thoughts together. I guess that's why it would be considered a misconception. But if I can be honest, just speaking in general, I remember when I came to China in 2018 and I was like, what the they don't do this in America. Nope, it ain't like that in America. Nope, in America we do no. I was definitely that person, but I've been here so long and I had never been abroad. I never lived abroad before I came here, so I didn't have much travel experience. So I did kind of have that mindset where I was kind of oh no, that ain't how it's done in America. We don't do this in America. In America we do this. In America we do that. which is why a lot of times, like, I would speak up a lot at one job in particular. You know what job I'm talking about? He knows what job I'm talking about. But I would like speak up so much. Myself and my other like American friend who's Filipino, we would speak up so much to the point where they didn't like us because we talk too much. Like, this is China. You kind of like, if they tell you to do something, you do it. You keep quiet, you do it. You don't really like ask too many questions. But me being from America, like, we ask questions. We want to know who, what, when, where, why, how, because we want to know like all of that. So I was asking like so many questions, and I think it was rubbing them the wrong way. So a lot of times, not even like the African coworkers, but the Chinese coworkers and the coworkers from the UK, the coworkers from like different places, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, the Americans are so entitled. Like they talk too much, blah 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 blah." But we'll get to that, right?
Yes, you will.
We'll get to that. So yeah, like now that I live overseas, I think now I have it set in my mind, and now that I've lived overseas and I've traveled to different countries, I already have it in my mind that okay, I'm going to a different country. They may not speak English in this country, so I need to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
So
adapting, I think, for Americans is a bit difficult because they're going there trying to learn a new language. They don't want to learn it. Most people don't want to learn it. So I think adapting is something that everyone should get used to.
You should say closed-minded Americans. It's hard for closed-minded Americans to adapt. Again, some people have never left America. I know America is like, oh, the dreamland, but a lot of people haven't traveled outside of America, so that's all they know. That's the mindset that you have. Again, that's how I was when I initially got to China. I was like, what the, like, take me back to America. Take me back now. But I had to learn to be like more open-minded, more understanding, and just be like, okay, you're in a different country. It's not America. They're not gonna do things the same way because it's not America. Get over it.
Okay. So the second misconception that we have about African Americans is, back in Africa, we think that you guys are really privileged because when I was growing up, we didn't have like fancy like foods to eat. Like, I remember there was a time when I think was it McDonald's McDonald's, they showed these commercials on TV. You see them eating burgers, and I didn't know what a burger was. And we thought that you guys, those living in the West, in the States, for example, they are having access to like good schools, good roads. They're having access to like really amazing lifestyle, And so for us, we think that everyone from America is like privileged, kind of like you have access to everything to do whatever you want. And so when you travel, you notice that when you travel back home, and probably you might experience that, but I'll be with you, so you won't go through that. When you go back home to Africa or any other country, you notice that you get surcharged on certain services and goods. So if it costs like $1 because you're from the States, and they can tell from your accent, they know you're not from here, they can charge you for like $10 or $15 or $20. Yeah, because you're from them. We think that you have the purchasing power to do that. So
$1 to 10 or 15?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So that's one of the misconceptions we have about you guys. Like, you guys are privileged and you're living the best life. Seriously.
Okay, so again, that's definitely a misconception. If I can be honest, I'm probably like the poster child or the stereotypical like Black child. I've had that life growing up. Like we spoke about it a little bit, but I'm probably like the stereotypical like Black American child because my mom was a teen mom. My dad wasn't around. My dad was like incarcerated for like more than half of my life. When I was younger, like we struggled. It wasn't until like my mom, got older and became more established that we were able to kind of like, I guess you can say splurge. But growing up, oh my goodness, like we had a really tough time. So everyone is not privileged. And then you also have to look at it from like, I hate to say this, but from like a Black American standpoint and a white American standpoint. White America and a Black America is like two totally different like ends of the spectrum for the most part. It's like your Black privilege and white privilege is going to be like totally different. Like I don't like to say that like black people are like privileged per se in America, but I've had certain white people, like my white coworkers, like they argue like, well, black people, they have privilege too, like they have their own colleges and they get hired because they're black and things like that. But in terms of like colleges and universities or HBCUs, the reason why we have HBCUs is because we weren't allowed in white colleges. The reasons why, you know, black people and people of different like races and ethnicities or whatever you want to say get hired is because of affirmative action, because jobs would not hire black people. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, that like privilege is like, you know, it's totally like two ends of the spectrum, depending on whether you're a white American or a black American. You know, black Americans, we have to work like 3 times as hard as a white American, you know. You can even like research. It would take a black American to get the same job as a white American with just a high school diploma. A white guy could get it, but a black person, they would need like a degree, like an undergrad degree to get the same job that a white, you know, American can get with a high school diploma. Yeah.
So if for instance you're applying for a job as a waiter or waitress, I don't think.
But that's not like I don't mean to cut you off, babe, but that's not like a legit like job.
Oh, you're talking about like entry level position, okay, the company, okay, right. Really?
Yeah. So I think it's crazy that, like you said, they hear the voice, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, foreigner, they got money, that they're privileged, you know,
much less American.
Yeah. It's not like the same for everyone. And even if we take the black and white like totally out of the equation, everybody just ain't privileged, because I know white people that grew up with like nothing, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know black people that grew up with nothing. Like I said, like I'm probably the stereotypical, like there's way more that I could say to like make you guys understand like how I'm literally the stereotypical like black child that grew up in America.
Okay, that's quite nice. I didn't know that. Because growing up, we thought you guys were privileged, honestly. I'm sure any African watching this would agree with me on this. So the third misconception that we Africans have about African Americans or Black Americans in general is we think that you guys are lazy, you know. And this is not to offend anyone. Because for us back home, we always thought that, you know, or we still think that, you know, America is the land of opportunities, and once you get there, you put in a lot of effort, you work hard, you can make it in life, you know. And so we find it very strange to see African Americans or Black Americans on YouTube, online, in the media complaining that, the system is this, they're not getting jobs and life is difficult and all of that. But from where I'm from, we see a lot of Africans migrating to the United States, either from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Cameroon, Congo, you know, and they make it. And most of them are successful either academically or like professionally. And so we honestly, it's engraved in every African mind that most African Americans are really lazy, because we feel like you're not putting in like a lot of effort like we do when we get to the States. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so to piggyback off of that, let me tell you guys a story. So when I was an undergrad, I was friends with a girl. She was from, so she moved to America when she was about 7. Guys, if you hear like crumbling or someone walking, it's our nanny. She's she's washing clothes right now, and we have like the big bag like washing powder, and she's like digging into the bag. So if you hear that, she's washing clothes. If you hear footsteps, she's walking around. If you hear the baby like cooing or making noise, they're in the background, okay? So let me jump back in. All right, so back to my story. She's from, I think she moved to America when she was about 7, right? So to me, she's pretty Americanized. Pretty Americanized. I didn't know she was. Yeah. I didn't even know again, that thing where I was like, half of the people I didn't even know they were from Africa. But yeah, I didn't know she was from Africa, but of course, after we became friends, I found out she's from Africa. She moved to America when she was 7. So again, she's pretty Americanized. So she came to my house one time and we were eating mangoes, right? So I pull out my little, like, you know, like the fruit and vegetable peeler, and I'm like peeling my mango like real fast.
You don't do that.
So I'm like, you want to use the peeler? She was like, no, lazy American. Lazy American is what she said. But to me, it's
my God.
To me, it's like, work smarter, not harder. Why would I sit there and like use a knife and I'm like trying to cut like perfectly, not cut too much meat off of the mango when I can just with the little like slicer and eat my mango.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's what she told me. She's like, yeah, lazy Americans. Yeah, so that's my little story. But
wow.
To piggyback off again what you said, like, you know, Africans, they go to America and then they make it. How long does it take them to make it though? Because you're not just gonna go to America, especially as an immigrant, you're not just gonna go to America and be making bank. From what I understand, a lot of times Africans, they go to America and they're working like fast food jobs, they're working at grocery stores, and eventually, yeah, they get to a point where they can kind of like work their way like up into the, I guess, the economic ladder. But again, like, that's just like black people. Like, some people, or black Americans, they start off working at fast food, grocery store, this, that, and, you know, eventually they get to where they want to be. A person that just graduated from high school, of course, they aren't like making bank or even in a career to where they are like stable enough. So I feel like, yeah, some people are lazy, but aren't there lazy people in Africa?
Yeah, they are. But you know, the thing is, for us, that's why it
looks that way.
Yeah, it looks that way because, you know, someone like an African will migrate to the States, will start, like you said, from fast food, all of that, and work in the factory, do this, work at Walmart, you know, all of that. But the core is, most Africans, when we migrate to the States, we start from the low, but we focus on school as well. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, back in Africa, we are taught that, okay, education is the key to success. And so even though we'll come to the States, we'll be the cleanest.
To success.
Yes.
Sorry.
Seriously, we will start from the bottom of the low, like the lowest of the low, and then we'll work our way up, and we'll be going for like evening classes and doing all of that, mm-hmm. just to upgrade ourselves with a degree, you see. So most Africans in the state, you can check, I think most of you can check, have a degree, master's or a PhD. Like, mm-hmm. so that's what we think, that most African Americans are not really, you know, ready to put in the hard work, and unfortunately it's engraved in our minds back home and everywhere.
I think that's crazy because, again, I graduated from high school. I was working as a server when I was in college. I was working as a server. I was working like 35 hours a week, going to school, taking classes, trying to like better myself. So again, the video is about misconceptions. So yes, a misconception. Okay. Some people are lazy, yes, but not all, you know.
Okay.